Okay.
All right.
Okay, we're here.
Yes.
So first of all, I want to thank you for being here. And for everyone that is watching, I'm super excited about this podcast. It's not going to be the usual random conversation. We are here for a very specific topic,
Yes.
which is
Cannabis.
Exactly. I'm going to turn up the gain a little bit. So for everyone that is interested in cannabis, is using cannabis, you definitely want to hear the whole conversation. It's going to be very interesting.
Yes.
And if you're not interested in cannabis, you might be interested after this conversation.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, everyone loves plants, and cannabis is a very interesting plant.
Yes, indeed.
So, just to give a little context, how we got here.
Yeah.
I'm here with Anna de Roy, first of all. The amazing, the beautiful Anna de Roy. We've known each other for we haven't seen each other that much, but we've known each other for like maybe 12
years,
yeah,
I think so.
Like
Yeah.
So last year, to obtain my bioscience technology degree, I wrote my master thesis on cannabis.
Yes.
And I've been super interested in cannabis, obviously, and I wanted to talk about cannabis for quite a long time. And then in the summer, in December, I think, when I was in Costa Rica, you texted me that you wanted to talk about cannabis, and I was like, okay, let's do a podcast immediately. Let's record a conversation. That's how we got here.
Yeah.
And you wrote my thesis, which is quite surprising for me, honestly. It's very nice to hear.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I didn't read it all, but...
Yeah, it's very long.
Yeah, it is.
The first part, so the second part was about the more the chemistry, but it's very technical as well, the second part.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first part is about the classification and
indeed,
all
and
the good stuff.
From where it comes and the classification and stuff.
Maybe first, why are you interested in cannabis, and what are you doing in life at the moment?
Now
I know, but it's very interesting.
Now I'm studying herbalism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really interested in how our body and plants can help each other to heal. So I bought a book on CBD and the medical part of cannabis, and I was in love immediately.
Which book was this?
It is CBD and the medicinal working of cannabis. So
purely about also about the
it's also about all the other things in cannabis.
It's
but
called phytocompounds. I think we're gonna talk about it quite a while.
Right.
Phyto is plant, you know probably, and then compound.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. It's really interesting because you can do so much things with basically almost all the diseases we have. We can heal with CBD or the other compounds of cannabis. So for me, as a herbalist, it's really interesting, because that's what I'm learning, how to heal my body with plants and nature, and cannabis is I think the most medical plant there is.
The most medicinal capacity or uses.
Exactly.
I don't know, actually. That might be a quite interesting question to ask you, because I don't know. I know a lot about plants, but more like the agricultural side, the production side. That's my master, but we never really learn about
it is the
healing parts of plants.
The thing with cannabis is that the system of cannabis, we have I don't know in English, the endocannabinoid system.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Nice.
Just with an English accent.
Yeah. Nice. Perfect.
Yeah.
So with cannabis, it's very interesting because we have the endocannabinoid system, and it has the same how do you say it?
Compounds. It's also compounds.
Yes, as cannabis.
So
actually, the compounds in cannabis are the same that we have in our body. So that's why almost the same. That's why we react so good on the compounds like CBD and all the stuff. That's why it heals our body. But with other plants, we don't have the same system.
Actually, we do.
Yeah?
Yeah, for example, and I didn't know this before doing my thesis. For example, opioids, you probably heard about like the opioid crisis and epidemic in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned then that there are opioid receptors in our body as well.
Ah, right. Yeah. Okay.
And so one of the so just to show one of the very interesting differences between cannabis and opioids, for example, is that opioid receptors are in the brain stem, which the brain stem is controlling actually our respiratory system.
Yes.
And that is why, because there are receptors of opioid receptors in our brainstem, that you can overdose and die. It can compromise your respiratory system.
Yeah.
There are no cannabinoid receptors in our brainstem.
Okay.
And that is probably why in a 10,000 year use of cannabis,
nobody overdosed.
And I looked it up. Really, I was like, never was it mentioned in one literature.
No, in the book I read it, they also said it. There didn't die.
No recorded death of cannabis ever.
Indeed, exactly.
And one of the reasons is that because there are receptors for many compounds in many different plants. So that's something maybe that it's interesting for you. We do have receptors for many other plants. But it's just
I think the
endocannabinoid system,
is the biggest system, I guess. Yes, and it's one of the important systems in our body because it keeps everything in balance, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
So maybe for the people that actually don't know about this, but now we're geeking out about it, but maybe it's the first time that people hear about the endocannabinoid system. So it's actually a system that has been discovered by accident in 1963 by some researchers in Israel, and it's actually when they first discovered and mapped I think it was THC. They found THC for the first time in 63. And they were like, okay, now we have the answer on how we get high, because it's the only phytocompound that we know of. Actually, there are others. But
of course.
That make you high. That are psychotropic, as we say. And then they were like, but how does it work, actually? Why do we get high from THC? Why does it has these why it has this high effects? What do they say? When it makes you sleep, sedating effects. And then they were like, okay, so probably there is going to be some receptors, some reaction in our body, and that's when they found the first cannabinoid receptor in our body that locks exactly with THC. So then the person that found that receptor, she said, okay, I don't want the people to think that these receptors are specially made for cannabis.
No.
Okay, it's not in our body, this receptor, to make people high. That's what she said. Literally, I wrote it actually in my literature. So it means that if there is a receptor that can bond with THC in our body, and it's not specially for THC, it means that there is a chemical in our body, made by our body, that is super resembling to THC.
It is.
And then they looked for it, and then bang, they found the first one. It's called anandamide, and anandamide has like the same effects as THC actually.
All right.
Yeah, so I was like, whoa, that's so crazy. So actually, when you said that we have the same compounds in our body as cannabis, it's not actually true, but we have like similar compounds. And the compounds, they are called in cannabis phytocannabinoids. And in our body they're called endocannabinoids.
Yes, of course. Wow. Yes. Yeah, that the
cannabinoids
is the system of the cannabis plant, then the endocannabinoid system is a system inside of us.
Exactly. So an andamide is, for example, an endocannabinoid compound that is structurally and in function similar to THC. So you want to know what it does? Actually, it's interesting because a lot of people now ask me like, is it bad for us? Like, is it really bad for our memory, etc.? And then it's actually a very interesting topic for me, and that's like the second part. You missed that, but it's very interesting. So anandamide is our brain or memory editing tool in our brain. And the person, McCollum, who is actually called the godfather of cannabis because he found THC and CBD. Not CBD. CBD was, by the way, the first cannabinoid found, and it was in the 40s. And not to go in a different tangent, but they made cannabis illegal in the United States in 1937.
Yeah.
But the first cannabinoid was found in 40,
Yeah.
3 years after, and then they didn't even really know what it did, and then only in 1963 they really found like what it, not even really, they just mapped the structure. But so I don't know if you read that, but I asked the question in my thesis, like, so the reason why they made it illegal, was it racially correlated? Or was it scientifically correlated? No. And actually, it's self-explanatory because the compounds were only found like decades afterwards. So it's not possible to be scientifically
of course not.
Based. But that's on another tangent.
That's true.
But we can go afterwards about that. It's actually interesting. But so anandamide, the function of anandamide is to forget stuff. Mm-hmm. And I wrote in my thesis that it's evolutionary very good to remember things, right? Remember where the berries were when we were gatherers. But it's also very important to survive, to forget trauma. And McCollum said it best. Do you want to remember all the faces in the subway in the morning? No.
No, of course.
And so anandamide, that's one of the things I think, and I didn't even know this, but in our brain, everything, like, there's no things that happen by just randomly or that happen by itself. Everything has like receptors and hormones and molecules, that everything works, like it has a process, a whole mechanism behind it. And so forgetting as well. And so when people ask me, is cannabis bad for the memory, then I say, well, it has the same structure and function as anandamide, which is already in our brain. Mm-hmm. And so it's like adding anandamide. And it can be bad, but it gives you a different perspective on it. Like it's not just saying like, it's bad. It's like understanding really the plant.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I started to talk about that, but that's very that's because you said like that we were talking about the endocannabinoid system, so
the receptors and stuff.
It's super interesting. It's like the biggest and the most important regulatory system in our body.
Indeed.
It has like it has like
it's your temperature, it's for diseases,
pain,
your heart,
hunger,
everything.
Super interesting.
And just like everyone is unique, everyone's body and endocannabinoid system is also unique. Therefore, it is important to note that everyone reacts to a certain degree in a unique way to cannabis. I am in no way, shape, or form a medical expert, so please do not take any medical advice from me. Always be critical and do your own research. But from this information, I can only conclude this. Cannabis, or certain types of cannabis or cannabinoids, may not be suited for everyone, especially during the development of the endocannabinoid system, aka before and during the adolescence. Cannabis's potential psychopharmacological power is clear, but it is imperative, considering the high user amount worldwide, together with the often misleading and unregulated cannabis industry, that more research is needed to uncover the complex mechanisms of the endocannabinoid system and its relationship to phytocannabinoids.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk about it more, but I know you have questions.
Yes,
and actually,
I prepared some questions.
We're gonna keep it short for once.
We're gonna try.
So you can ask your questions.
So we all know that because of the prohibition on cannabis in the 70s in America, there it was very hard to do some research for science because they had no money, they couldn't get a loan, they weren't supported with it, so nobody everybody stopped looking for the cannabis. But what does this? What's the
consequence?
Yeah, the consequences today because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know that the medical market from cannabis is really unregulated, and so it's hard for people that really wants to heal themselves with cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know the doses, to know which receptors are. Yeah, everything. It's so hard because also
which kind,
yes,
dose,
yes.
Yeah.
And also the doctors aren't like schooled with it,
yeah.
you know. So
they are actually open for it a lot in Belgium, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was also a question. How are we in Belgium now? Where do we stand in Belgium?
Yeah. So first, what are the consequences of?
Yes, of the prohibition on cannabis in the 70s.
So, so many consequences.
Yeah.
So, like I said, they made it illegal. I have to like keep it short.
Because
No, because there was a very big use for like 10,000 years of like cannabis, and it's only like the last 100 years that it's been illegal and prohibited in most of the world, which is insane if you think about it. Like some scientists say that cannabis was the first plant that has been agriculturally used by humans. I read it too. I was like, what? That's so crazy. Mm-hmm. And it's because it gave food, it gave fiber to make clothes, rope, and inherently, humans look for conscious altering substances.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you see children like turn around because they want to get dizzy, and then you can see actually, it's very human to search for different states of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the third thing that it gave, and that's what we call pharma. So there is food, pharma, and then fiber.
Yeah.
And so for 10,000 years it was used all over the world. That's something very, very important as well. Cannabis grows everywhere, in every island, in every continent, except Antarctica, but there's only like some grasses types that grow there. And then in 1937 they decided to make it illegal in the US and in Europe as well. They kind of followed like in the same period. And then for the last 100 years, like you say, the scientific research has been heavily obstructed.
Yeah.
And even now that it's not, so that's like jumping forward, even when it's not really obstructed, it's very difficult for universities to accept research on cannabis because they are afraid to lose funds, and because it's such a taboo still.
Indeed.
They're kind of afraid for the topic.
Yeah.
So that's something very difficult. But what are the consequences? Well, the consequences are that cannabis is a plant that has been used statistically. I think it's something insane, like 1 in 25 people in the world use some type of cannabis in some kind of form, which is insane. Yes. 1 in 25. But nobody really knows what it is, how to use it, what are the consequences, good and bad. So that's, for me, like the most important like response I can give to that is that so many people use it and come in contact with it once in their life, and well, I don't know, in the right or wrong way, I don't know, but it's just they don't know what they're using, and it's actually so that combination is very dangerous.
Yes.
And from my thesis, actually, it turned out that there's a lot of acceptance in Belgium. That's where I did a survey, right? And I asked to 800 Belgians if they I measured their acceptance of cannabis, and the acceptance was actually very very high. Very high, and the general knowledge on the legality, on the biology, and on the pharmacology was super low.
Yeah.
I
can imagine that. Yeah, of course.
That was what I was expecting, and so that's a very dangerous combination, actually. So for me now, the biggest consequences, most importantly, are that it's still very, very unregulated, and it's very annoying. For example, for me personally, because For example, my mother could benefit from CBD because she has like back issues.
Yes.
My sister as well. She has a multi-syndrome handicap, and she could also use cannabis in some way, in tinctures or in balms or in tea, whatever. You can use it in so many ways. It's kind of
also,
like right?
So nice.
And for example, my mother bought CBD tincture from Spain because in Spain you can get it, but there has to be written always in Europe almost that you cannot use it, right? You can buy CBD in Belgium, but you cannot. There's like you cannot smoke this, and that's how they kind of avoid it's like a loophole in the legal system.
Indeed.
But that's super dangerous because they can kind of put whatever they want in it, and it's not there is no standard control practices.
No.
And that's for me the biggest consequence that it's first of all dangerous, and second of all that we take away something that could potentially help so many people.
Indeed, exactly.
And for example, in Belgium there is a coalition that is called We Are Sophie, and it's a coalition that started because a girl with, I think, epilepsy or multiple sclerosis needed cannabis, and the Belgian government kind of took it away from her, and it was substantial that they really started like a coalition because they were like, this is unacceptable. And it helped her obviously, and now we cannot use it. Like, what the fuck, actually, you know? And that's the second part. That's a shame. And then the last part, the third part is, besides obviously that it's unregulated, nobody knows what the fuck they're doing actually. Cannabis is chemically so diverse. When I try to explain this to people, I say, we all know there's apples that are like green, red. They have different colors. Then they have different tastes, more bitter, more sweet. And then there is also apples that are inedible and are only used to make cider, for example. Cannabis is the same thing. You have to imagine it's the same thing. So there are like cannabis that makes you super, super high, makes you like you cannot do anything, like it's called couch lock. And then there is cannabis that there is even cannabis that has no cannabinoids, by the way. It's like type 5, chemotype 5. It has no cannabinoids. So I just want to say it's like that, like the example of apples, but so much more diverse, which is ridiculous than to make it all illegal. Actually, it's so ridiculous thing to do. And there is also hemp, which is to make fiber, like not even to consume. And they also made it illegal, and there, I think it was like, at once upon a time in Europe and Russia, it was hemp was like the biggest like produce for fiber in like all Europe and Russia, and then they made it. All these people that lost jobs from it, and it's because of greedy people that were in the paper industry or were in the cotton industry, and they didn't want to lose, and they had like lobbying power, and then they made it illegal. So there are so many consequences to what your question. There are so many consequences, but that's like the most important thing I would say.
Yeah, I think cannabis is a big concurrent for a lot of big companies, and that's why also it's still illegal. And especially in America, they have like so many organizations that are trying to keep it illegal, just because of the pharmaceutical companies. They don't want to have cannabis as their concurrent, you know, because I think it's because they also can take a patent on the plant cannabis. So
it's difficult, but what they take patents on that's a whole other conversation. There is a war going on in the medical cannabis sector right now, and it's the single target, single compound, single target paradigm versus the whole plant extract. I don't know if
I think, isn't it the single compound that they can take a patent on, so and the whole So
the single compound, single target paradigm or way of using or the mechanism, like it's the way modern medicine.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
it's based on.
Yeah. They take one compound of a plant and they isolate it so much, and then you only have.
They make it sometimes. They make a synthetic.
Yeah, they make
form
it
of
synthetic indeed.
Not always. There are now 2 cannabinoid-based medicines on the market, Sativex and Epidiolex, that are in most of Europe, most of the world. It's no, I don't. But it's a lot of countries. It's legal, even in Belgium.
Okay.
And it's a natural. Well, it's the real thing. It's like the real cannabinoid. And then there is also other ones that are based on synthetic cannabinoids.
Yeah.
I don't. The name escapes me now, but in any case, so it's not always synthetic. That's just what I wanted to say. How it's made, I mean, we can discuss that, but it's not. There is a whole movement in the cannabis industry, or let's say the cannabis community. I would prefer to say that, because I think it's like more of a community than an industry.
Yeah, indeed.
Which is one of the amazing things I think about the cannabis sector. And there is a lot of backlash or criticism on that single compound, single target way of doing things, because a lot of people also, from anecdotal evidence, say that the whole plant extract works best for their
because
element.
When you take the whole plant, there are also compounds that, like, in the modern pharmaceutical
way of doing things.
The thing is, they extract one compound and they forget all the other compounds, but the other compounds, they take care of the
absorption,
the heavy side effects of one compound. So you need the other compounds to make the side effects less big,
we call it entourage effect, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if it's in all plants we call it that, but in cannabis industry we call it entourage effect. That's the entourage effect.
Like when in my course that I'm now is I'm gonna say it in Dutch because I don't know, the ballaststoffen. Dat are the compounds they take away because it's like, oh, we don't need it. But they they take care of the side effects, you know. So it is very important to use the whole plant because all the compounds, they take care of each other. So
I think I have one friend, Nina. Actually, she's super busy with all like nutritional stuff, and she told me something that. Actually I noticed also from different sources, but that when you eat something that you need something else to like make it absorb better. I don't know the examples, but like that if you eat one thing, you need something else, like iron or whatever, to make it like
indeed
work well in your body, and it's in
or
all
to get to let your body absorb it better, you know.
And that's one of like the big criticism, and the big problem, and that goes to your previous question, is that they cannot really scientifically prove that because they have done so less research on it, that we're still in the infancy phase of all that research.
Indeed.
So it's something I couldn't really find the only thing I did in my thesis, like say, okay, there are these two sides, and I'm not gonna say which one is best. I can just say from what I read from the science literature is that there is anecdotal evidence, a mountain of anecdotal evidence that says that a whole extract of the plant works better. And intuitively, it made sense. It makes sense to me.
Of
but
course.
it's the way of modern medicine of take one compound and that's the way you can test the things the best. That's the thing. That's the way you can make things more reproducible. That it's always the same effect, and it's just super complex to like. That's just talking. Coming from science is that it's super difficult to study like a complex mechanism.
The whole
it's just super difficult, and I think
and it takes years also.
Exactly. Especially in clinical research, like all the rules and obviously, I mean, it has to be you have to do it on preclinical on rats and mouses first, and then you have to do it on
humans.
There is a lot of like. tussen stoppen. But yeah, that's the first answer.
All right.
You have another one?
Yeah, and I have another question. How are we in Belgium now? Where do we stand in Belgium with the whole cannabis community?
There is definitely a cannabis community.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's almost only amateuristic. There is not really a cannabis community, I would say, in academia.
Yeah.
I think there is like a handful of professors or researchers in Belgium that are researching cannabis. That's one of the reasons why I was so motivated to do my thesis and to make it so long, because it's not actually normal to have a thesis that is like more than 100 pages. Usually it has to be like very short and to the point.
But this isn't.
Yeah, it is not. But it was really because I wanted to maybe change some minds of my professors and of my faculty.
Okay.
And it's a shame because all the countries around us, Holland obviously is way more advanced in like research as Belgium, Germany as well, France, and even the UK. Okay. So we are like many things in Belgium. Like it always takes ages for like new legislation to go through because they're fighting between the French and the Flemish, and they're I don't know. Yeah, so there is, for example, a cannabis bureau that is gonna was supposed to actually be already happening in the government, in the Flemish government. It's called Cannabis Bureau. It's like a task force that is specially made for cannabis. And I was like, okay, I went in, like, where can I reach these people? And then I tried, and then it was like, oh no, actually we're not doing that right now because of COVID, and that's not really happening. But I should be doing a presentation for like the ones that want to do that soon, like maybe in a couple of weeks or months, and I'm gonna try to lobby a little bit and try talk some science with them, because that's what they need. They really need objective facts.
Yeah, indeed.
And that's for me the most important thing.
Of course.
Just objective. And I think there is too much subjective.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. It's a very subjective onderwerp.
Yeah, it's a very popularized, and I think what you want to say is that there's a lot of people talking about it and saying a lot of things about it, and there's thousands of websites that advertise seeds. That's one of the things you wanted to ask, and advertise seeds in cannabis, and they say it has this kind of magical power and this and that, and so much. I think actually I just read it. There's I wrote in my thesis now strain names. There are like 17,000 strain names right now. 17,000, and a couple of 10 years ago there were like 6,000, and I think in 77 in the US there were like 5 or something. So it just shows that it's a hype thing. It's people like, the rappers sometimes are like Wiz Khalifa, like Khalifa Kush. Now it's like my strain, but there is no like, again, no disrespect, actually I don't know, but there is not a lot like of real scientific like evidence that it's like a really unique strain, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we are at now. That it's just something still in the shadows, and it's in the hand of the people and of a lot of non-scientists, and it's a bit fugazi. It's like a lot of people say stuff, and a lot of claims are made, and it's dangerous. Again, it's kind of dangerous.
Not even real or not. Yeah.
I just learned that so much cannabis is like in Belgium sprayed with heavy metals to make it heavier. I just learned it, and I was like, oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah, the best thing is to grow it yourself these days, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Upon researching the rumor that I had just heard, I couldn't find much evidence of heavy metals being sprayed on cannabis to make it heavier. There have been reports of cannabis contaminated with heavy metals, but these have been uptaken out of the soil by the plant rather than added in by humans in post-production. However, the evidence is clear in the fact that cannabis is far too often being contaminated with a bunch of harmful products. From dangerous synthetic cannabinoids to enhance the psychoactive effects, to, indeed, products that can increase the weight of cannabis, such as glass particles that can cause tiny lacerations in the throat and lungs, with severe respiratory problems as a possible result. The extremely unregulated underground cannabis market that can escape any standardized control practices is, of course, again, one of the detrimental results of a worldwide ban on cannabis that we talked about earlier.
The other question I have is, when you were writing your thesis, where did you stumble on? Like, which problems did you have to do your research here in Belgium? Like,
okay. Let me be very, very transparent in this. So I had already. So I was actually doing another thesis before in 2019. I wasn't already doing it, but I already was doing some research, and I was going to go to the Galapagos to do some marine biology surveys, and I was super hyped. Already had the beurs. I don't really know how to say it, but like I had to ask and get funded, right? And I got that. I was super happy. But a couple of months before that, I presented the idea to do a thesis about cannabis to my professors, because my master is agriculture and horticulture, and we learned about every single plant in production. And there was not once mentioned cannabis, which was absurd to me. First of all, because so many people use it, and second of all, because it's a $1 billion industry giving thousands of jobs all around the world, and it's not discussed like in academia, which is so... Ghent and the faculty, and they're really good. I think it's very high quality academic system, but they should acknowledge at least that it exists and that it is a very, very alive industry in the world. Anyways, I said, can I do it? Like, let's do it. I'm gonna be the first that really does some real research on cannabis. By the way, they are doing research on cannabis at the Ghent, but it's like in criminology, right? In law. Okay. Yeah. And it's good. It's nice. I actually, a PhD student helped me from the criminology. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying that's no natural science. Yeah. And they were like, no, we cannot do it, sorry. Go ask this other professor. So I went to the other professor. He's like, no, it's going to be difficult, I'm sorry. Again, because a lot of professors and universities are, I think, it's an image thing, and it's also about like getting the right funds, and they are afraid of getting defunded, etc. And then I was like, okay, whatever. And then I'm gonna do the Galapagos thing. And then when I was in Ecuador in the summer of 2019, my professor called me and he said like, oh, by the way, I found a way, and we're gonna be able to have a plantage, a facility, and we're gonna grow it, and you're gonna be able to do your research. I was going to do research about LED lights, like the different lights you can, and optimize the growth. And I was like, okay, super hyped, it's gonna be amazing. Just because it's kind of it's kind of like breaking the odds, and I was just about all that, and then I agreed, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do Galapagos. I said sorry to promoter and everything, which was a bit shitty thing to do because I was going and everything. And then months and months of me asking to that professor, so when are we gonna do it? Can we do it? So where? Because I was kind of already like, we're not gonna be able to do anything, right? I was anticipating that because I smelled it. Yeah. And in March, and I think he did everything he could, my professor, but he even went lobbying with the government and with like big institutions and everything, and everyone was like, especially the government, they were like, no, we're not gonna pay that, and we're not interested in that. And that was pre-COVID, right? And then in March, COVID hit, and they said in March of that year, which is already like the last couple of months usually of a thesis, where you're already supposed to do the last results and do the final thing. They said like, okay, you're not gonna be able to touch cannabis during your thesis.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's
sad.
That was super sad,
Yeah,
and I was very frustrated because just because of months of researching.
Yeah, of course.
And then I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna still do my thesis on cannabis, and I'm just gonna do a crazy review. And
you did.
And I'm still gonna. I just wanted to learn the most, because I was like, I'm not gonna learn anything practically, obviously. So I'm gonna learn the most I can about this plant, and I'm gonna change some minds so that hopefully in the future, the students that are interested in it, they can
have the chance to
So that's what happened. So I definitely found some obstruction during my thesis. That's not even everything. Like I tried as well and everything, and they were so not down for the government, the police even. We had to go to the police station of Merelbeek, of part of Ghent, to ask permission. And
wow.
They said, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna do a research about hemp then, because hemp is legal under the 0.3% THC, and I was like, I'm just gonna grow it inside so I can still study cannabis, because I was already in the research, and I already understood that there is only one species of cannabis, cannabis sativa, right? And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna do about hemp then, whatever. It's super subjective, all this classification thing, anyways. So I'm gonna grow it inside, and then they said, oh no, you cannot grow it inside, because then we cannot know if it's like hemp or different kind. We cannot see it. And I was like, what? Seriously? So it's the same plant, but I'm gonna grow it inside. You think it's gonna change? And I was like, oh my god, that was.
They're being so hard, you know.
No, but it's being I'm not gonna say it's being stupid, but it's just being the horses with the thing. They cannot.
You're not open-minded about it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. That classification problem is one of the reasons why I made my cannabis about cannabis classification, because I really think that the classification issue, the fact that the government doesn't make a difference or doesn't know the differences about the different cannabis species and everything. It's a big there is one species, so it's difficult, chemovars, let's say, but people say strains, people say varieties. It's such a mess. In reality it's chemovar, that's what you have to say, but
okay.
But that's why I wanted to do it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do something about classification, and that's exactly what I'm gonna try to explain to the government as well. I'm gonna try to explain.
It's very subjective, and it also has a lot to do with politics, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it's so hard to study it too.
Yeah, exactly, in politics, because I think that was also something you wanted to know, what was it about?
Yeah, what's the connection between the classification and politics? There's a big connection, but
So I found that there were 6 classificatory methods. I'm going to look it up exactly. I think you saw it as well. And one of them is legality. So that's the answer to your question, is that one of the subjective criterias of classifying cannabis is how it's legal, its legal status. 6 classificatory determinants or methods. So first there's geographical origin, then there is morphology, and then there is legal status. So that's the answer to your question. So in the legal system, in the law, the difference, it's a fairly simple way of differentiating, classifying cannabis. Everything that is below 0.3% THC in the dried inflorescence is called hemp, and everything that is above 0.3% THC is called different ways. It's called marijuana in America, but since we're not in America, I call it in Europe drug type cannabis.
Drug type.
Because, and I'm not trying to do like a moral thing here, but marijuana is a it's actually it comes from like Mexicans and it was racially
that's
loaded.
why they call it marijuana.
I think it's totally fine that in America they call it marijuana because nobody thinks about like, oh my god, it's like oppression of Mexicans and everything, but they took it from Mexican word marijuana with an H, and then they were like, this plant is plant of the devil and the local weed and marijuana, because they were actually using tinctures before that for like already 100 years, I think, in America before they made it like it was available in pharmacies all over the country. And then they were like, okay, marijuana is illegal and it comes from Mexican.
To the Mexicans.
Exactly. But so it's kind of like a popular word, and I don't think it's very scientific. So I say drug type cannabis. Yeah. So that's it. So it's 0.3% is like the differentiation point, and then there's hemp or under it, and above it's drug type cannabis. And actually in Europe it's 0.2. So that's one of the conclusions of that part, is actually that it's totally bullshit to do it that way. And that it's very, very it's lacking a lot of things. Just for example, there is no standardized way of like measuring that. So you can come to a growing facility 1 week, you can take they say dried inflorescence, by the way. So it's like you take like this part and then you measure like the THC, but the THC level is gonna be different here. They don't say that. And then next week you're gonna do the same thing, is gonna have a different level, and it's totally bullshit. It's super subjective, and I think it's very outdated method, but it's in the defense of that system, it's like kind of the only way they have. So they have to do with that, and I'm not expecting like every police officer or government official to be scientifically like schooled in like cannabis, because it's a very complex topic.
It is.
But there have to be some people that are scientifically aware of like cannabis that
of course
help the people of the government, and that's what I want to do.
Can't wait till we have a good regulated cannabis market, industry, community,
So I'm gonna look at the time. I have so much more to say, but if we want to wrap it up, maybe one more question, or I don't know. Or do you have more time afterwards, or no?
It's okay.
Yeah? Okay, yes. Cool.
I'm going to look at my questions.
Okay, cool. That's nice. Because I wanted to, maybe we can, maybe for the end of the podcast, we can say where is the cannabis industry going to?
Yeah.
Classificatory wise, I think it's very interesting.
What I wanted to ask is, in your thesis you're also writing about land races. So that's the real original cannabis plant or not, or
let's go into origins, please.
Yes, tell me all about it.
So I have a map here, and I'm gonna put it somewhere here of the distribution hypothesis, because it happens. So they say that the first people ever to come across cannabis was around 10,000 years ago, and that was right at the end of the Paleolithic period, and we were still nomads, so we went from being nomads to settled agriculture, and that's when we found cannabis, and then some people hypothesize or say that is the first plant, which is again insane, it's so crazy. It's such a significant plant in like humanity, right? and that happened in the Asian plateau, in the Tibetan plateau, so in Central Asia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show. Yeah, so here. So this is the postulated domestication area. I think now it has to be here more. So it's still in debate. And one of the things that is very difficult in finding the origin of cannabis is that they have to do it with like pollen studies. But the pollens are very, like, it's not like bone. Like it fades away, and it's very difficult. So sometimes they find like an intact pollen, and then they can do some genetic study on it, but it's super, super difficult. That whole science area is very difficult. So that's the first thing that I want to say. But so we're sure that it's in Asia, Central Asia, and then from there we took the seeds with us like humans did back in those days. It's very, very common to humans to explore and to take our goods, what we like, with us, and obviously we liked cannabis and we took it with us. And we dispersed it all over the world. So we did that. You're from Central Asia to India, East Asia, and then to Europe, Africa. Then they don't really know when it went to America or South America. South America indeed first. They don't really know. Is it like the slaves? Did it go on the boats? Was it like the Europeans that took it? So they don't know. But in any case. Remind me your question again, because it's something that I find super, super interesting. What was your question again?
About the land races.
Land races, exactly. So 10,000 years ago, we used it for the first time, and then we took it with us. And then, do you already understand what I'm going through? It's difficult to say like what's an original. First of all, what is an original plant?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay, so that's the first question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can say like, okay, from 5,000 before Christ, which is the first literature, first time in the literature that it was written down in the Pensa. It's a medical book of a Chinese emperor. Yeah. That was the first time that it was written that you can use it for all kind of things, but it was like really all kind of things. It was even against like hair loss and everything, and like so many things. And I was like, okay, let's take this with a grain of salt. But I don't know. I mean, but in any case, we can say from 5,000, all the plants around 5,000, we're gonna say those are like the original plants, but it's not really original plants. But the most important thing that I can say about that is that the plant has obviously been hybridized like crazy everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, and especially during the making it illegal, they had to move from plants that were grown outside, for example in California, and I showed this in my thesis as well, like an enormous plant, because a lot of people think that drug type cannabis is like small plants, but it's bullshit again. Like a lot of things in cannabis, like what they say, it's like not really. It's like when people ask me, so what is the difference between sativa and indica, and I'm like, oh my god, where to begin? Like it's not
There's
even
a lot of
real.
Wrong
it's not even real, like these words, but in any case. So they had to take this very, very tall plant, and because it was made illegal, they had to grow it inside. So they had to make small plants of it, and then they hybridize it with plants from like Central Asia, and that were smaller from more Afghanistan. Now it's called like the Afghanica, and then they made like smaller plants that were potent, but they were smaller because. For example, ruderalis. It's like I wrote a whole chapter on it because it was so difficult for me to find a definition for ruderalis, which there isn't one. A lot of things I started writing about. Actually, it's funny because I wrote my thesis, but like the classification came afterwards. Because I wanted to write a very nice introduction, like this is cannabis, this is where it comes from, this is like the family, etc. Like most plants, we can do that quite nicely. and I wasn't able to, and I kept on writing like, oh, it comes from there and there, and there's
and you had to put it all together,
exactly.
like, okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it by classification then. And all the ways that people like find ways to classify it. But there, so land races, what it's now referred to are plants that grow outside, that are very well adapted to the pests and to the climate of that region.
The weather also.
And that's what we call land races, and it's more like the ancient plants. But then again, there is no real. I mean, maybe in Tibet, you can find ancient plants, but there are still but like everything in nature, actually, you're probably aware of this, like in the Amazon, when they lock down like massive amounts of like the Amazon, and they lose potential like medicines. Do you know this?
No.
Like, for example, in the sloth's fur, you can find like unique compounds that could cure like cancer, stuff like that. But it's like unique to every sloth and unique to every sloth population in the Amazon. And then when you kill them, it's lost. Like that knowledge that could benefit us is lost. And it's the same with plants in the Amazon and everywhere in the world, where I think it's now 30% of all pharmaceuticals that are in the market, in the pharmacy, are based on natural compounds.
Yeah.
So that's something very, very important for people, I think, to understand, is that we take things from nature, and we do not often like, oh, I found a new compound and it works well. We found it from tree bark and I mean, I'm not gonna go in the whole hallucinogenic conversation, because we're gonna go way too far.
Podcast.
Yeah, another podcast. So yeah, there are still people that go look for these plants that have been relatively unhybridized, because potentially these plants could have phytocompounds, phytocannabinoids that are or phytocannabinoid profiles more. So the combination of both that are very unique and are very interesting and could potentially cure diseases that other plants weren't previously able to, and that's getting very rare though. It's getting very rare, and that's why I said about like it's the same with everything in nature. Like the more we are destroying nature, the more we are losing these sources of I was going to say these sources of youth or whatever, like gold, like I don't know, name it how much you want, but we can do so much with it. And it's actually fun to watch. Like there are some documentaries of like people, they go like hike in the mountains in like Colombia or Tibet, and they go look for like special strains, and then they have like they take a seed and they're like, this is gonna be a $1 million industry, this type of seeds. Like I'm gonna take this to Holland, and then and from one seed you can like create a whole new strain or hybridize it with like different ones, create something unique. There was actually something cool that a scientist, shout out to Philippe Henry, by the way, who helped me. He's a very cool guy. He's like a very good researcher on cannabis, and now he actually does research on hallucinogens, on hallucinogenic toads. I don't know if you know about this.
Toads,
pot.
I
don't know the exact name, but yeah, in any case.
Kambu?
No, it's like something bufferel, I don't know.
Oh,
but it's like some type of toad that has like excretions that are hallucinogenic, and it's super. I'm gonna show you afterwards a documentary that you can watch about this. And he said to me that he, for example, smoked once a strain that he found like in Mexico growing just somewhere, and he said like, and that strain from Mexico that was just growing outside, because he's so adapted, and his body and his mind is very accustomed to like one specific strain or like Western or Canadian strains.
Yeah.
That he had like a whole like the THC level was very low, but he got super high from it.
Okay.
Just because of like the unique soup of like
yeah.
And it's terpenoids, by the way, that do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about terpenoids.
Yeah.
But so that's for your answer on land races is that it's crazy. There's so much diversity in cannabis and way more than other plants because it's the most ecologically successful plant in my opinion in the world. And there is even like a documentary that I watched that said, and it's a whole like twist perspective, that actually it's cannabis that used humanity to become like super ecologically dispersed. And it's scientifically correct because all living things want to reproduce and spread their genes.
Yeah.
So like bacteria, plants, and
everything.
Fortunately viruses as well. But yeah, so that's super interesting. I was like, oh shit, like actually they
mind blowing.
Cannabis is everywhere. Like so many people like grow it everywhere, like and it spreads, and now it's everywhere, and it comes from like Central Asia, and that's crazy, but.
They did a good job.
Yeah. they used us, goddammit.
It's okay. I don't mind.
But and by the way, I don't know if it's something you ever thought about, but like, how does it come that we have receptors in our body that that click right with like the cannabinoids from a plant? Like how does that? Why is that? How does that work? I don't know. What do you think?
Very, very good question. Yeah, we're all connected to each other, and we all have the same.
What do you mean, human or every living thing?
Every living thing.
Living thing, yeah.
Yeah, of course, every living thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Every living thing, and I think, we're all connected, and we all have the same. Not all the same, but most same compounds also, so
humans are very unique.
That's true, but still there are compounds that are found in humans, animals and plants and stuff, and that's, I don't know, it's
cannabinoid receptors are in other mammals as well.
Really?
So I want to demystify immediately, like people thinking like, oh, we're the chosen ones.
No.
But no. We're not, and there is like even like worms and stuff.
I read it too in the book. You can use also CBD and stuff for your dog.
And
cats, it is.
Drops, eye drops and stuff. So they have a endocannabinoid system. So I asked, I was like, how odd that we stumbled across a plant. Like I think of it like in a very like scientific way, but like that we have receptors, and we have anandamide and other endocannabinoids that are structurally almost identical, and like how
I think
why?
It's very cool. But indeed, how?
And then I was like, I'm gonna write about this, but I was like, no, I'm gonna go way too far. And it's also not very like scientific. It's more like philosophy.
Subjective and philosophy
it's more
also.
Like, it's more like philosophy, or not even, but it's more like up there. Like, but I did read about it. Like I wanted to know if somebody had like a theory about it, and I read some interesting, but I don't really believe it.
Tell me how interesting.
So plants, all plants have the phytocompounds, of course. But these phytocompounds, like everything in nature, and I say this to so many of my friends, like nothing in nature, and nothing is like, there's always a purpose for things. And nothing in this universe wastes energy just to waste energy.
No.
So that means that if a plant puts energy in creating a certain phytocompound, it has to be a reason for that. And that's where my question comes from. Like, why does it influence us in the way that it influences us, and why? And for example, why does it have this memory losing ability, and some other compounds have like the complete
different opposites.
Opposites. Like for example, pinene and CBD are like pro-cognitive, can influence neurogenesis and stuff, and that's one of the things that I say to people that are like, oh, it's a drug and it's not good. I'm like, yeah, but they're like
so much. There's so much more.
There's so much and so much diversity, but to stay on point, I read a theory that said that it was a defense mechanism, like a lot of phytocompounds are from the plant.
Yeah.
Some plants have poison and create stuff that when a mammal eats it or an insect,
they
like it kills it
or it kills them.
Yeah, exactly.
Both,
So exactly. That was what I was going to say. Is that some kill immediately.
Yeah.
And then there is other mechanism where, for example, they make you forget. And one of the theories was that if, for example, a horse back in the day, like thousands of years ago, like ate from a cannabis plant, that the cannabis plant had the effect of like making him lose his memory, kind of, to like
leave me alone,
not making him remember where the plant was.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a slow degeneration of like the animal. Like after a while, he doesn't really know, like, and some people in some biologists say that that's a more effective way of like defense, because you really change the behavior of an animal, and it's like more effective than just killing one animal and all the other animals are gonna.
Indeed.
So because the other ones are following that, or they don't, like if one falls dead, they can keep on eating, but if they all kind of have that, and then
they're like, we're going away here.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my god, that's so.
I don't like this plant.
But that's funny. I just thought it was so funny, and then
but it could be true, because there is also I read it in my course. We in Belgium have this plant, Sint-Janskruid, I don't know it in English. When cows eat it too much, they hallucinate.
Really?
So they know the next time, I don't need to eat this plant.
Oh yeah, maybe it's like consciously that these horses or whatever didn't want to eat it anymore. But actually I don't think so, because I know a lot of animals do like to hallucinate.
Like dolphins also. It's a pufferfish.
Jaguars with DMT.
Really? No.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because it was something super, super interesting that I saw or read, that on DMT trips, ayahuasca, by the way, for the people, that a thing that a lot of people see or hallucinate are jaguars, and jaguars are known to also trip on like DMT. Actually, I should have like somebody fact check that, but I know they trip definitely. I saw a video of like a jaguar on his back, like. You can watch it afterwards, but like he was like tripping like with his eyes, and you can really see him like he's looking at something, but there's nothing. Yeah, and then it said that, you know, like everything is connected, and the fact that we are seeing jaguars when we have DMT, that it's like the interconnection of like the species and the. And I
did ayahuasca, but I didn't saw with jaguar.
You didn't really hallucinate much, right?
I did, but it was
it
was just a lot of
fractals or
and
mild hallucination.
It was
distortions.
It was really short and heavy. Boof.
Oh, really?
And then it was finished. And I was like, okay, but it wasn't. I didn't have the experience like other people have, that they see stuff coming to them, telling them stuff. No, for me it was like a really, really hard trip. Like everything was just was.
Whoa. Yeah, because apparently, I think we talked about that already, but there are like a couple of phases, and like the last phase is a lot of people say that they're talking to sentient beings, or like, how do they call it, like talking to like beings, other beings.
Indeed,
like God, some people would say, but
I only did it once, but normally
like
you have to do it.
Exactly.
You have to do it like 6 or 7 times in a row in 1 week, and because I think the first time you need to adapt, you need to see, what is this, and let go of the control, what I didn't do. So I'm really controlling. I'm like, what's happening? And
apparently,
so
apparently, I want to talk about more about hallucinogens, but maybe we can do another podcast about it.
That's good.
You have another question, or
maybe as last question. Now we know that the market, the community, the industry is so irregulated. Like, what do we have to notice? What do we have to look for when we want to buy seeds or good CBD? What are the things we really need to take consider? Okay,
so you can go to my thesis
page.
So at the second part of my thesis discussed the chemistry of cannabis, because in my opinion, it's like, from a legal standpoint, it's like probably the way it's like prohibited. No, it's not probably. It is the way, the reason why it's prohibited. So it's like where the most taboos is like the chemical response people have to it. So that's why I thought it was very interesting. Secondly, it has a very, very important role in classification. You can classify it in all ways, like we said it, like legally, morphologically, origin. But in science and in medicine, we don't really care about all that. We care about what is this plant we have in front of us, what is its profile, and more specifically, which phytocompounds does it have, and in how much, which ones, in what levels, and that's what we care about. We don't care about where it comes from, or I mean, we care, but not if you do medical research.
Of course.
So that's why I wrote about it, and then I tried to keep it as short as possible, to show like the most important phytocompounds of cannabis. So I'm gonna show the table of content, actually, so that's gonna be easier. So first, cannabinoids. So first, introduction to cannabis, secondary metabolites, but then it's cannabinoids. So there I discussed THC, CBD, CBN,
CBA,
CBC, THCV. There's so many, and then there is like the acidic forms, because it's all decarboxylated forms actually that we use when it's warmed. And then I'm going to talk about the terpenoids. And terpenoids, I'm gonna say it for the people that don't know. It's a phytocompound that is in every plant.
And the smell. It
gives the aromas and the smells and the colors. Then there is also flavonoids, but that would have been too much. But actually, those are also a little bit important. But
very important, I think.
But because it's so unregulated cannabis, let's be very happy already if we take cannabinoids together with terpenoids. If we can already distinguish with that as a help, we're going to be happy already. And so first there is the three main chemotypes, and chemotypes is a way of classifying. So there are two ways of classifying with the help of the chemistry. It's chemotype, and then it's chemovar. Chemotype only uses THC and CBD, and in what ratio they are in the plant. And then the chemovars will use that plus terpenoids. So it's kind of like an advanced way of classifying different cannabis variants. By the way, I wrote it in a way where it made the most sense, but obviously a lot of very quality research papers use chemovar and chemotype like it's nothing, like it's no difference, and it's still a mess. Which is unfortunate, but we're getting there. So chemotype, there's chemotype 1, a lot of THC, not a lot of CBD. Chemotype 2, 1-to-1 CBD THC. Chemotype 3, a lot of CBD, not a lot of THC. And then there is 4, where there is a lot of CBG, cannabigyral. And then the chemotype 4 and 5, and that I said there is no cannabinoids. It's called the cannabinoid the cannabinoid the zero cannabinoid chemotype. I think that's it. I mean, there's a lot of different names, anyways. And then there is the chemovars, and that's for me where the cannabis industry is going to. So we took, Arno Hazekamp, by the way, was the first one really to do like very good research about that. He wrote a paper which is called going from strains to chemovars, I think it was, from chemotype to chemovar, it was, in 2012.
Okay.
And that's where he said, okay, there has to be a better way of like, by the way, you have to remember, like, legally they use just like the 0.3% like THC. Okay, above that it's drug type, under that it's like, this is like way more advanced, right? It's like way better. It's such a primitive way of like classifying cannabis. So he said there has to be a better way of classifying cannabis in a way that users, recreational, medical, the doctors, and the people describing it, right, the people producing it and the people selling it can be like, okay, this is this chemovar type, this chemovar type, in a way that explains effects on the body, and in a way that's actually the most important thing. And then that's what he did. And so we are still not at a very recognized standard way of doing that. I mean, not really. But I wrote like the last like research about this. It's in my thesis. If you want to read this, you can. It's for me one of the most interesting things about cannabis, because I really learned about some mind-blowing things about some terpenoids and which effects they have. Like, for example, pinene has pro-cognitive effects and pro-memory, which is like, okay, so if you have a strain that has not a lot of THC, a lot of CBD and pinene, like, it could be good for the brain. And I say could because everything that I say, you have to think we are very, like, there was nothing almost that is like very clear, like we're absolutely sure. And in any case, in all science, it's always like humans with their flaws that are deciding things. But so one that is to explain this concept of chemovars, I'm gonna say one example. There is now the mostly distributed in illegal circumstances is the cannabis chemovar that has a lot of myrcene as this primary terpene, and then a lot of THC. And myrcene is the terpenoid that is found in hops, so in beer. And by the way, beer is also in the family of the Cannabaceae.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So myrcene is what gives hops like its smell. A lot of people don't like that smell, but like what you smell when you're like in a brewery. And THC is the sedative cannabinoid. And by the way, myrcene is called the sedative terpenoid.
Okay.
So quite logical that combination of high THC, high myrcene is a perfect combination for couch lock, what we call it.
Okay.
And that's why it's so well distributed in the illegal sector, because that's what growers are looking for, like the thing that will get you the most high, the most sedated, because that's kind of the currency that they have in the illegal cannabis industry. And there are a dozen other important terpenoids, like pinene, like limonene. Limonene is a terpenoid that has been proven to get people off antidepressivas.
Okay.
So it makes you happy. It's like the smell that is in lemons and all citrus.
It is.
Exactly. And so it's universally a smell that people like. And so, for example, if you have something with low THC and a lot of limonene, it's not going to be sedative. It's going to be energizing, and you're going to be able to do activities, etc. And so that's where we are going to in the cannabis industry. From like the 17,000 strain names, we're going to go like hopefully to like a dozen chemovars, maybe 10 or something, or 5, and they're going to be able to tell you something important about what you're choosing and what it's going to have as an effect on your body and on your mental. So for example, this one you're going to be able to be active, and this one is going to be good for pain, because some people like to be sedated for
Yeah.
pain and for insomnia. And yeah, so I think that wraps up, and that's the end of the podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much for all the answers on my questions.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm very glad to talk about this topic.
Yeah, me too.
Always.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. As always, I very, very much enjoyed doing this podcast.
Yes.
Cheers,
Alright.
and you have a train to catch.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Ciao, ciao.